Alright, it's time for part 3 of the view meter build. Now, I think for this video, we're going to go ahead and start doing the signal diodes. This is going to be a long and tedious and boring process, but it should be fine. Alright, so I've got a bunch of signal diodes. They're just marked as D3, D2, D whatever, and so on, but we do have to make sure we get the polarity correct on the board. That is going to be a little challenging because the polarity markings on the board are actually really hard to see. So in the interests of saving a little time, I'll go ahead and place some of these on camera, and actually place them on camera, not off camera like I just did that one. And then I'll probably do a jump cut to where I've completed them. There we go. Ooh, that one's a little loose. Oops. Went it a little too tight. Alright, these ones are all facing that. Oop. These ones are all facing that way. And this one goes here. Alright, and then that one goes here. This one's loose. I don't like that. Let's bend those leads out a little bit, hold it in place. There we go. Alright, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do a jump cut when I've finished placing all of these because they're taking a lot longer than I'd like. So we'll be right back. Alright, jump cut complete. So I took the liberty of soldering most of these, but I've got one row left that I can just quickly do on camera here. That was very long and tedious placing those, so it was good to leave that for off camera. So we're just gonna quickly polish these off and move on to the next set of components, which I haven't figured out quite yet which I want to do next. Come on, there we go. Let's finish these off first, and then I'll make a decision. Alright, so that's the signal diodes complete. I'll just trim off the leads now. That's a technique I've never discussed, but a lot of people that do these kits do. You put the tip of your finger against the wire that you're clipping, and it keeps it from pinging off into the distance, like that one just tried to do. Alright, let's sweep those off to the side. I've got an extra one, and I don't know where it goes. It might just be actually legitimately an extra one, but yeah, that's a little concerning. Okay, oh hey, we can do this one real quick. The 1N4147, or 1N4007 power diode. It's probably in there as a crude polarity protection, which is kind of a low budget polarity protection. It just prevents the circuit from functioning if you plug the power in the wrong direction, whereas if you use a bridge rectifier, even in for a DC supply. It will not only protect it from reverse polarity, but it will also make sure that the power is flowing in the correct direction. I think the next one we'll do is the microphone. Now, these little electric condensers, I've done a video on them in the past, but they are polarized, and it's important to follow polarity. So you'll see there's a couple of different pads and leads and stuff on the bottom. There will be one pad here that has a couple of little tracks going off of it to the edge that actually makes contact with the can. That's the negative lead. Of course, on this board, they've positioned the silk screen such that, I mean, you wouldn't be able to really put the microphone in backwards. So let's go ahead and put the microphone on. A bit of a ground plane there. Let's make sure the seated nice and flush. Yep, all right. And then we'll do the other side. There we go. All right, so there's the microphone placed. Let's see, what other components can we do? I think the next logical set of components would be the potentiometers. So we'll go ahead and clip those in. Thankfully, they're all the same value, 473, which is going to be 47k ohms, 47 and then 3 zeros, makes 47,000. So these are, they have like little bends in the leads so that they sort of clip themselves into the board and hold on. So let's go ahead and get those arranged on the board. All right. Click. And click. All right. I'll just throw some solder onto those. I just realized I went completely silent there for a couple of seconds. I forgot I was actually filming. I just got into the zone soldering. A little long silence there. That's not good for filming, Chris. People get bored if you stop talking. Although then again, people probably get bored when I start talking, so that's probably also an issue. Alright, we'll just trim off the legs of these, which tend to be quite sharp. Definitely don't want those pinging off into the distance. I actually have a mark on my right glasses lens from where I took a hit from a piece of wire that I was trimming. Let's see, I didn't solder one of these entirely well, so I'll just touch that up real quick. Alright, so that's the potentiometers. Yeah, let's go ahead and do the power connector. So I probably should have done this before. Yeah, this is going to be challenging. Alright. I generally try to do the components in the order of closest to the board and up. It can be sometimes a little challenging to do successfully. So, like in the case of this power connector, I thought it was going to be much higher off the board. I just had to prop it up with my snips there to keep it in the board. All right. go ahead and trim those. There we go. What else can we do? Oh yeah, let's do the voltage regulator. Okay. How are we doing for time? We're good for time. So I already kind of sized out where the voltage regulator needs to go, so what I'm going to do is take my pliers and put them at the point where the leads need to bend, like about there. Make sure it's reasonably well straight, and then just bend the leads down like so. That makes a nice neat thing there, and then the voltage regulator fits into these holes there. Ah, perfect. And of course is a component that I probably should have soldered earlier, because it's much closer to the board than the surrounding components. So it's just kind of dangling there at the moment, but that's okay. You solder one lead, then reflow the joint. Make sure the component is nicely aligned. There we go. And then solder the remaining components. All right. And there we have voltage regulator is now on the board. It's got a little hole there to bolt it onto the board. I don't think I'll be doing that, but it's an interesting little touch. They not only took the time to drill the hole, they actually tinned it as well. Okay, what should I do next? I think I'll do the capacitors next. So we'll start with these big ones. These are the 220 microfarad capacitors. There's a plus and a minus marking on the board there, minus being the one with the stripe, or generally the shorter lead. So we'll go ahead and slide these into place. These are just going to be filter caps for the supply. They're probably in parallel, aren't they? Oh, they're actually acting on two different parts of the board. That's interesting. I would have expected them just to be in parallel, but looks like one is acting as a filter. They're acting as filter caps for different parts of the circuit. So that's interesting. Alright, well, they're now nicely soldered in. We'll go ahead and trim off the leads. There we go. Alright, what's next? Alright, we're doing the electrolytics. So there's a bunch more electrolytics that go on the board here, so we'll just quickly socket them in, winding polarity. These electrolytics probably won't explode if you plug them in backwards, but they certainly wouldn't do what they're supposed to in the circuit. Well, maybe I'll do it sometime on this channel. I was going to say, if you want to see somebody blowing up electrolytic capacitors, go see Electro Boom or one of those other high voltage shenanigans channels. They like to do stupid things with electricity, but they do it in a fun way. Alright, almost got all these caps in place. I'm probably going to have to reflow most of these because they're not really super well in place there. I should have done the ceramics first. Oh well. Alright. So we'll go ahead and flow one lead of each of these caps. Like so. Oop. Come on, there we go. And then that one. That one. That one. And do the thing. There we go. Alright. Then we'll just make sure that they're all nice and flush. Again, not super important, but it's nice to make sure it's visually attractive. There we go. They all nice and lined up. Ooh, this one's way off the board. Let's go ahead and put that one down. And yep, we're all good. So let's continue. And we'll just finish soldering the electrolytics on. There we go. There we go. I actually kind of briefly thought about making this into a QA video, sort of in the style of Big Clive, where he has people submit questions in the comments, and he compiles them all and then answers questions while working on a project. Makes like an hour-long video or so. I would need a more reliable way of keeping track of my time. And speaking of time, we're about to run out. So rather than run the file size dry and ramble on to a deactivated camera, I'm just going to finish trimming off these leads. We'll wrap this part up here. If you haven't already, consider clicking here to subscribe. Right over here is a video that YouTube thinks you'll find interesting. Right over here is the View Meter playlist, which is what we're building. And right here is a link to Patreon, which you can use to help support further kit builds and projects like this one. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in part 4. Bye-bye.